Chapter 7. Aunt March's Visit. The day after Christmas, there was a snowstorm outside. Mr. March sat in the living room in a big, comfortable chair near the warm fire. Mrs. March and the 4 girls sat around him. They were very happy to have him home again. Hannah was happy too, and brought hot tea and cookies. Mr. and Mrs. March looked at Meg and then looked at each other. They did not now say anything, but they were worried. Meg was silent, and her face became red when someone said John's name. "What's the matter with everyone?" asked Meg. She looked at her sisters and then at her mother and father. Everyone was silent. "Well, why is everyone silent?" Meg asked. "Your John is the problem," said Joe angrily. "Don't say my John," said Meg. "I don't care about him. We're only friends. When he asks you to marry him, what will you say?" asked Joe. "Will your face become red, or will you cry, or will you fall into his arms like people do in stories?" "I'm not silly," said Meg. "I already know what to say." "What will you say?" said Joe. "I'll say, 'Thank you, Mr. Brooke, but I'm too young now. Let's just be friends.'" Joe smiled when she saw Meg's face become red. Later that afternoon, someone suddenly opened the front door. It was John Brooke. He came into the living room. "Good afternoon," he said. "I came to see your father and to get my umbrella. He's resting now, but I'll go and tell him you're here," said Joe, running out of the room. She wanted to leave Meg alone with Mr. Brooke. When Joe left the room, Meg got up too. "I must go and tell my mother you're here," said Meg. Mr. Brooke stopped her. "Don't go, Meg," he said. "Are you afraid of me?" "No." "How can I be afraid of you?" said Meg. "You were kind to father. Tell me, Meg, do you like me a little?" He took her hand and held it. Meg forgot all the words she wanted to say. She wanted to run away, but she also wanted to listen to him. "I don't know," she said softly. He looked at her with loving eyes. "I love you so much, Max," he said. "Can you love me a little?" "I'm too young," she said. "I'll wait," he said. "Perhaps you'll learn to like me." Meg was confused and did not know what to say. Suddenly Aunt March appeared in the living room. Mr. Brooke left and went into the study. "Hello, Meg," said Aunt March, looking around the room. "Aunt March," cried Meg, "I'm surprised to see you." "I came to see your father," said Aunt March. "I'll go and call him," said Meg. No, said Aunt March. "Wait a moment. Who is that young man?" "He's father's friend," said Meg nervously. "Your father's friend?" she asked. "Yes, Mr. Brooke," said Meg. "He's Laurie's tutor," she said, surprised. "What's happening here? Is he the man you want to marry?" she asked in the loud voice. "I don't know," said Meg softly. "Don't marry him, or there won't be a penny in my will for you," cried Aunt March. "He's poor. He's a tutor. You can't live on love. Find a man with money, a man with an important job and a big home. That tutor only wants you because he knows I'm rich." "What a terrible things to say, Aunt March," cried Meg. "It's not terrible. It's true, you silly girl," shouted Aunt March. "John is a kind, honest man. He works hard, and he's intelligent. Everyone likes him. I'll be happy with him, and you can leave your money to everyone you want," replied Meg. Aunt March was very angry. Well, you're a very silly girl. You'll be sorry for this. You'll get nothing from me. Goodbye. She left the living room and went away in her carriage. Meg sat down. She was confused and tired. The next minute, John Brooke came back into the living room and sat next to Meg. "I heard everything you said, Meg," said John. "Thank you. Now I know that you like me a little." "Oh, yes, I do, John," said Meg softly. She looked at his kind brown eyes, and they hung. When Joe came back, she saw Meg and John together. She did not know what to think. John stood up and said happily, "Sister Joe, Meg will marry me when she's 20. Joe said nothing and disappeared. That evening the March family and their friends were in the living room. John was very happy, and he told everyone about his plans for the future. "I want to work hard and make a lovely home for Meg," he said. Meg looked at him with loving eyes. Mr. and Mrs. March already loved him like a son. They knew he was a kind, honest young man. Amy was ready to draw a picture of the two young lovers. She had a big white notebook and artist's pencils. Beth smiled happily, and Joe and Laurie talked together. "I'm not happy about Meg and John, because I'm losing my best friend," said Joe sadly. "Oh, Joe, you have me," said Laurie. "We'll always have great times together, I promise." "I know we will, Laurie," said Joe. "You're a true friend." Mr. and Mrs. March sat together quietly and watched their family and remembered their lives 20 years ago. "What a wonderful one moment," said Mr. March. And so a difficult year ended for the March family.